How many have you forgiven today? Chapter 27, Part 2. Twilight reaches out for another book and scans through it. It recounts how many ponies would hide away from the knights Luna brought to them, out of fear from the stories that would come back to the front line. Whenever Luna came briefly to the castle to report to her sister, many of the ponies would avoid her, even going so far as to lock themselves away. They were afraid of Luna, despite her fighting for their sake. The doors to the library are thrown open. Twilight jumps in shock as she turns around to see Luna standing there. After having read these books, Twilight feels far more uneasy than before. Luna walks up to Twilight and stops before her, casting a brief glance at the book that's sitting on the table.
Have you found an answer?
Luna asks. Twilight looks between the books she's been reading, then back at Luna. Taking all of this in, Twilight is still not too sure why Nightmare did what she did, but if she had to hazard a guess, then there's only one answer.
I believe that Nightmare Moon was lonely. The ponies shunned the night and feared the pony that was protecting them. Due to being isolated, Nightmare just wanted ponies to appreciate the night, and all that was sacrificed during the war.
It's a long shot, but deep down it makes sense to Twilight. Luna was protecting ponies, and yet they feared her. She didn't have many that could understand how she felt other than her soldiers. With no place to feel like home other than the battlefield, Luna was left isolated. Once it was over, they still feared her, and many of her soldiers soon passed away. Left with no one to understand her, Nightmare Moon came into being. And in that loneliness, anger took form. Luna doesn't say a single thing as she stares at Twilight. After a moment passes, she turns away.
The question cannot be answered, Twilight. No one knows why Nightmare did what she did, and I doubt anyone ever will.
Twilight is confused by this.
So why ask?
There's a bit of silence that builds between them as Luna walks towards the door to the library.
There is one thing you must keep in mind, Twilight. We all have a monster inside of us. It waits for the right opportunity to show itself, and you'll be surprised by how far you're willing to go when the right conditions are met. Yours comes from the need to understand what you cannot.
Twilight flinches at that.
Mine comes from the need to protect the ones I care for.
Luna stops briefly as she looks over her withers.
Study session is over. I've got a meeting I need to attend.
Nothing more is said as Luna leaves the library. Twilight now sits there in confusion. She doesn't understand why Luna has done this, but she can't fight a feeling inside of her that something is wrong. Still, despite all that, she does feel as if she learned something today. Luna is really strong, and Twilight can never imagine herself in Luna's shoes. It's becoming clear to Anon that this entire meeting is going to be far more complicated than he originally thought. Celestia made it sound easy enough. Go to a meeting, sit around, and eventually leave. But as they approach the front of the castle, Anon is starting to have his doubts. There are many carriages that sit outside of the front gate, many of which are decorated in various styles that differ from one another. Clearly, these were brought from the guests themselves, and they definitely look expensive. Not only that, but guards litter the castle ground, many of which aren't even ponies. Anon recognizes a few guards to be diamond dogs and griffins, but some of the other guards and creatures he's never seen before. One of them looks like a minotaur, as it stands on two legs and has horns atop its head. There's also this weird pony-like horse. It's tall like Celestia, but also really slim. The only thing Anon can really think is how weird it looks. Even the face is far different than any ponies he's seen before. As they walk through the front gate towards the main door, there are a few other weird creatures, but Anon doesn't get much time to examine them as Celestia stops in place. He looks over to see Luna is standing in wait for them. She's currently decked out in battle armor that's reminiscent to what she wore during her campaign, but this set appears to be decorated for show rather than battle.
I thought I asked you to dress for the occasion, Luna.
Celestia asks with a sigh.
I find this armor far more appropriate than what you're wearing, sister. We must show them our strength.
Celestia shakes her head.
Perhaps this was our way long ago, but nowadays we show strength behind a veil of friendship. Though we have no time for you to change now, it'll have to do. Will you be joining us?
Luna asks, facing Anon. This is without a doubt some serious stuff going on. Luna is practically dressed for a battle, and the entire air around the sisters is almost heavy enough to choke Anon. It's a side of them he's never seen before, and hard for him to explain. He's seen them angry, sad, and even happy, but this is different. It's like they have no emotions and are here strictly for business. Anon has a tough time reading how they feel right now. With the way they're holding themselves, Anon is second-guessing if he should go with them. He has a feeling that he may cause trouble for them. However, his thoughts are cut short as Celestia pulls him to her side with a wing.
He will.
She answers. Luna looks between Anon and her sister.
Very well.
She turns away and walks off.
Come. They've waited long enough.
Celestia doesn't say anything as she pulls Anon with her. He's got a bad feeling about this, but it's too late for him to back out now. Twilight is walking down the hall, still thinking over what Luna and her talked about during her study session.
What did she mean by a monster inside of us?
Twilight lets out a sigh as she decides to table this line of thought for later. The fact of the matter is that there's a lot of activity going on at the castle right now. Twilight notices there are a lot more guards walking the halls, many of them on high alert. If Twilight had a guess, then there's probably a diplomatic meeting going on. Twilight is quite familiar with these meetings. She's never been to one, but they happened a lot when she was here at the castle studying under Celestia as a filly. There were some days when they would have to move her study sessions to another day due to how long the meetings can usually last. In many ways, Twilight feels like she's reliving those days right now. She's walking these halls, studying with a princess, and even returning to her room at the castle by the end of the day. Twilight is now standing before the door to her room. She lets out a sigh of relief to be back, not to mention that Spike is probably waiting for her as well. Twilight opens the door wide and notices Spike is lying in the center of the room on the floor.
Spike?
It's unusual for Spike to fall asleep on the floor. Well, unless he's exhausted. But as far as Twilight knows, he shouldn't be that tired. He doesn't respond to her calling out to him either. Concerned with his behavior, Twilight walks over to him to make sure he's alright. However, before she can rest a hoof on him, Spike moves away from her touch.
Spike? Is everything alright?
He's clearly awake, so why is he acting like this? There's a bit of silence that builds between them. Twilight has no idea what's going on, but she waits for him to say anything to her. This entire time, she can't help but feel a pit slowly growing in her stomach. "Why didn't you tell me?" he asks in a hollow tone. The fur on Twilight's body stands on edge. She feels her heart start to pound, as if his words fill her thoughts. He can't possibly mean what she thinks he means. Right?
Tell you... about... what?
Spike slowly sits up from his lying position and turns around to face Twilight. The look he gives her confirms what she fears. She can see it so clearly on his face. Fear, disgust, anger, and confusion. How could he have found out about what happened in Ponyville? She then remembers Luna taking Spike with her as she left. She told him. "Are you just gonna keep lying to me?" he shouts as tears start to well in his eyes. "You will think I'm a baby, right? That's why no pony has told me anything?"
Spike, please, just calm down.
"Don't tell me to calm down!" he shouts as his emotions continue to flip. "But Luna told me. I couldn't even believe it." That look of disgust comes back again. "How could you? How could any of you do that to Anon? I don't even know him that well, but no pony should go through that." What can she do right now? What could she possibly say to make this right?
I swear, if you just give me time, then I can explain.
Twilight says, trying to reach out to him. "Don't touch me!" he shouts, striking her hoof away. It's all falling apart just as she predicted. She can feel her own eyes now starting to well up as the pain inside of her grows. However, something inside of her happens. Without any warning, all of the pain and sorrow she suddenly felt vanished. Like a light switch. It was there one moment, and gone the next.
No, this isn't what I want. I don't want to ignore how I feel right now.
She needs Spike to understand that she regrets everything she's done.
Spike, I'm sorry,
she says in a dead tone. Spike's anger fades as his eyes well up. You don't mean that. Twilight reaches her hoof out to him once more, but he bolts past her and runs off. Despite what she looks like on the outside, Twilight is crying on the inside. Her heart hurts so much, and yet she can't shed a single tear. She feels nothing, and at the same time feels everything. Yet these things don't matter to her right now. All that matters is the fact that everyone she knows has left her. That single thought sinks in. The pain becomes overwhelming, and still not a single tear is shed. In fact, all she can do is stand in place. Even if she wanted to chase after Spike, she can't find the will to move a single inch. Celestia, Luna, and Anon all sit at a large round table with many other creatures. As soon as they entered the room, the sisters took their seats, and Anon took the only empty seat that was available, which was to the left of Celestia. The first thing Anon took notice of was that all of the creatures were looking directly at him. She looks far different than the diamond dogs he's had the unfortunate pleasure of meeting. Having a more groomed look, a longer snout and narrow head, making her look more like a wolf than the weird flat-faced diamond dogs he's seen before. Add the fact that she's muscular, and as tall as him, making her have an almost intimidating presence about her. Looking at the others, there are a few other species here as well. What appears to be a minotaur, griffin, deer, and even a dragon. Though this dragon is far smaller than the ones Anon has read about, but much larger than Spike. Standing at least 4 feet, if he had a guess. Before Anon could look further into the others, he hears someone speak beside him.
Who might you be?
The diamond dog asks. Her voice is very gruff, but she asked it in an almost gentle tone. Anon. He speaks loud enough for everyone to hear. And you?
Onyx.
She answers.
Where do you come from?
Anon can see in the corner of his eye Luna holding back Celestia from speaking. Something isn't right here. As he once again takes a look around the room, things start to look complicated. A few of the creatures are looking at him as if he were a prize of sorts. He gets the feeling he needs to tread cautiously. The Everfree Forest. Most of the creatures in the room flinch a bit at hearing that. That's interesting. The Griffin speaks up. I've not heard reports of a new species in the Everfree. In fact, he looks over at Celestia. Reports say you've been living in Equestria for quite some time. So that's how it is. Whether Anon likes it or not, it appears he just became a political chess piece for them to play against Celestia. He has no real idea how politics work, but he can only assume that if they see value in his existence, then they'll clearly use him to profit in some way. Is this what a Game of Thrones is all about? Well, that matters a little right now. The fact of the matter is Anon has no intention of being used. Politics is about lying, right? Well, he can do that easily. Yes, a sad story that is. Anon grabs everyone's attention. It's unfortunate of me to inform you all that I'm the last of my kind. We lived deep within the Everfree, far deeper than any creature dared to explore. One day, a monster we've never seen before invaded our camp. Needless to say, I was the only survivor. Anon can see all the creatures examining him. Each of them have no reason to deny what he's saying, and yet he can see that a few of them want to refute his words. Anon gives them no chance to speak as he continues his story. After all, a good story blends lies and truths together. I'm sure you've all heard my story past that point. I was subject to some horrible things in Ponyville, but nothing compared to the things I've seen in the Everfree. Though not all was bad, I was met with some relief when Celestia herself came to chat with me one day. I was still new to Equestria, and she was kind enough to show me the things I've never seen before. But I digress. She was kind enough to take me in due to the harsh treatment I had endured. Anon looks up at the others. I'm sure you all would have done the same. A few of them turn away from his gaze, and many show disinterest about what's happening right now. Seeing no reason to stop, Anon continues the story. I've been staying at the castle for the time being. Equestria is a large place, and there's still much to learn. Celestia invited me to this meeting to introduce myself to you all, to ensure that no secrets were kept from you all. Anon can see that a few of them look rather upset to be hearing the story, but it's about as much as he expected, seeing as they probably wanted to use him for something.
Thank you for taking the time to tell us your story. It's much appreciated.
A big-looking buck speaks out.
I'm Antler.
Every creature also gives Anon their name as things settle down. Anon looks over at Celestia and Luna as they look at him with a bit of surprise, but make sure to hide it well from the others. Sorry to have taken up so much of your time. I believe we can now start the meeting. Celestia gives him a nod as she turns to address the others.
Now that the introductions are over, let's begin.
That meeting is gonna be an interesting one. I can't tell if they want to use Anon just to get more land, or, I don't know, take him captive or something. But anyway, let's get on to our very friendly donators. Top donators are 630, BadassWaffle, Only One Thing, Ceru, Orion, and IronSky. Darkside, Rayden, Narwhals, Blackmoonheart, Pastel Skies, Austin, Rolan, Stu Hex, Sword, Beather, Mordred, Omicron, Library, Winslock 9852, Will, Chris, Twinkie, Ride, Soul, Shadow, Moon, Luigi 88, Chancer Crust, Big Smoke 369, Jesse Smith, Bobcat GGF, and many more amazing people. Thank you all so much for watching this video and live life to the fullest.